Welcome to this talk about sovereign and pension fund adoption of Bitcoin. Now, we call this category patient capital, and patient capital, it turns out, has a lot of money that they could be allocating towards Bitcoin, and they are starting to allocate. Now, to give you an idea, $72 trillion is more than all the world's RIAs, hedge funds, and wirehouses put together. They're starting to allocate to Bitcoin, but are they going to allocate as a tiny little tech stock or as an asset class? Well, that's to be decided largely by us. Now, to put that in context, I brought one of these out. This is a US $10 bill. Now, if you were to denominate this money in $10 bills and you're going to stack them from the floor and you're going to build a stack, you'd have enough to go from the floor all the way up to the moon and back again. So it's fairly significant. And it turns out that if we are to see Bitcoin price appreciation at a fast rate rather than a comatose rate, we really need sovereign and pension fund adoption. But there is also a lot of freedom go-up projects that really could benefit from a sovereign adoption. Here's three of them. So this is Batten. He has just been responsible for India's first Bitcoin-only fund being created. Now, thanks to him, the world's largest country has access to Bitcoin without paying capital gains tax. This is Ismail. He works in the charitable sector. He's just made it possible to give to charity in a Bitcoin-denominated way. Thanks to him, 50,000 people in the last few months who are new to Bitcoin have been able to give in Bitcoin as principal, a gift to charity that keeps on giving to your favorite charities such as Make-A-Wish, Amnesty International, and others. This is Harrison. Harrison funds Bitcoin mining projects using landfill gas. 35 projects like this, and Bitcoin becomes the world's first carbon-negative industry. He's just found 3 projects in the last 3 months. My connection to these people is personal. Harrison is my business partner. Batten and Ismail, I coach on my Bitcoin mastermind. And in all 3 cases, for their Freedom Go Up project to scale, number go up has to scale. So what makes number go up? Well, capital flows do. This is Bitcoin's price chart over the last 4 years. As we can see, the major spikes in Bitcoin price were when we had the major spikes in capital flow. But let's go one step further. What causes capital to come into the Bitcoin network? Well, this does. MSDR, ETFs, and Trump. But let's take a step further back again. What caused these events to occur? Well, a single conversation between Eric Weiss and Michael Saylor caused MicroStrategy. A single conversation between David Bailey and Donald Trump, and a single conversation between Larry Fink and a Bitcoiner who will remain anonymous, not me. 3 conversations, $70,000 of price movement. Are you getting this? The right chats can move charts. But right now, we've been having these chats of high impact around once every year. Well, what if we had these chats once a week? Now, what would happen if we were to start to have these conversations with patient capital more frequently? A single conversation with an average size sovereign fund would move, if we had a 3% allocation, would move Bitcoin price up by almost $2,000 directly, almost $20,000 through the halo effect. Fairly significant. We have had some incredible conversations over the last few years, which have had a phenomenal impact on Bitcoin price. We're just not having them often enough. The person who orange-pilled Larry Fink is genius at orange-pilling institutional investors. The person who orange-pilled the Fidelity directors is a genius at orange-pilling institutional investors. We have enough connectors in the Bitcoin network that these people could be having these conversations once a week. They're not. It's like having Leo Messi on your football team and asking him to play one game per year. We're doing okay, but we could be doing so much better. Now, the good news is that in the US alone, there are now 14 pension funds that have allocated to Bitcoin. That's cool. And the other good news is there is a clear path for an asset to gain widespread acceptance, and that's equities, which once upon a time was perceived as too risky to invest. Now it's perceived as too risky to ignore, with pension funds and sovereign funds investing half of their assets into equities. There's a clear trajectory that Bitcoin can follow. Now, Larry Fink has recommended just a 3% allocation. So of these 14 US pension funds, how much have they allocated so far? Is it 3%? 0.3%? 0.03%. Okay. But that's okay, right? They'll just be making a small allocation. They'll wait till that's successful. They'll do the pilot, then they'll allocate more, right? Wrong. That's what I assumed too until I looked at the data. That's not what's happening. We have a problem. The problem is that these pension funds today are conceiving of Bitcoin as a technology stock, not as an asset class worthy of a much larger allocation. Here's why we know this from the data. Of these 14 funds, how many of them have invested in ETFs or self-sovereignty as opposed to through MSDR shares? One of them. Okay? How many of them invested more than 0.15% of AUM? Not so many. Okay, well, how many of them have meaningfully increased their allocation to Bitcoin over the last year? One. No, -1. One has gone backwards from a large allocation where they now have 1/4 the amount. Okay, well, numbers aren't everything. Well, how many is following the journey from MSDR shares through to ETFs? Again, -1. One has gone backwards. Wisconsin used to have an ETF allocation. Now they've replaced it with a much smaller investment in MSDR shares. This is not what the early signs of mass patient capital adoption looks like. The issue is they're treating it like a tech stock, not as an asset class. And this is a problem because of a psychological term called cognitive entrenchment. Once you conceive of something as one thing, it's very hard to conceive of it as something else. For example, once you're conceived of as being just good friends, it's hard to be reimagined as a romantic interest, apparently, so people tell me. I guess what it comes down to is, as Bitcoiners, are we content with Bitcoin being just good friends, with patient capital, with the rather slow price appreciation that goes with that state of affairs? Now, the good news is, hope arrives in the most surprising of forms. These sovereign and pension funds, for the most part, will not have conversations with card-carrying evangelical Bitcoin maxis about Bitcoin adoption. They will, however, have conversations with third parties, and often with academic institutes. And in the world, the most reputable one to pension and sovereign funds is Cambridge. They have connections with over 30 sovereign funds at a governance level, actively talking about digital asset allocation. They also know what the 4 different blockers are that have stopped pension funds and sovereign funds investing more into Bitcoin. And here they are. And better than that, they also know how to overcome these 4 blockers. This is just one example of a large pension fund that they're engaging with. Now, the great news is, or rather the blocker is for them, why haven't they been able to go faster? Well, the reason is that it takes artifacts, it takes resources to be able to give to patient capital, to be able to give them the confidence that the 4 blockers they have can be overcome. These blockers are not fundamental, they are educational. If we are able to overcome these blockers, we could have 30 sovereign funds just like this one start to entertain Bitcoin as a digital asset. And there is a mechanism where we as Bitcoiners can do this, where we can help give them the resources in an arm's length way so that Cambridge is able to prepare this documentation that it needs to orange pill the world's patient capital. Now, the great news is that there's something else we can do as well as working with entities like Cambridge. We can also do a whole lot more of what we're already doing that's working. So what is working? We just need to do 20 more times of it. Well, what's working is, well, where did all the environmental FUD go about Bitcoin? Well, we killed it. Where did Greenpeace's Change the Code campaign go? We ended it. Why did Larry Fink, KPMG, Fidelity, and Bobby Kennedy get orange-pilled? Because we orange-pilled them. We have had some phenomenal conversations over the years, and in Bitcoin, we have some of the best communicators you'd ever wish for. People who can paint the world orange, starting with our sovereign and pension funds. And we also have people in Bitcoin who are some of the best connectors you'd ever hope for, who can introduce these people such that we could be having these conversations on a weekly basis. We just need to bring them together. And when we bring them together, truly amazing things can happen. All this happened not because it was inevitable, it wasn't. Not because it was written into Bitcoin's source code, it isn't. It happened because a small handful of honey badgers did the proof of work and had the conversations that changed history. Sovereign and pension capital adoption of Bitcoin, not as a tech stock but as an asset class, is not inevitable. It too will happen when we have the conversations with them that change history. We can achieve an average 3% AUM allocation to Bitcoin, 3% of $72 trillion, which is enough to see Bitcoin's market cap approach that of gold. Normally, we wait for history to happen. We have the chance to create it. We have all the ingredients we need to win. We simply need to bring them together. When everything clicks and these conversations occur, the most incredible things occur. Remember, chats move charts. We've done it before. We have changed the narrative on Bitcoin and energy. We have orange-pilled the skeptics. We have defeated better funded campaigns. Peter Drucker once said, the best way to predict the future is to create it. And we have the chance as Bitcoiners to come together and create this future where pension and sovereign funds allocate to Bitcoin as they should, as an asset class, with all the price appreciation and with all the ability to see Bitcoin succeed that goes with that. Chats move charts. And if this is a conversation that you'd rather be part of creating rather than watching, then let's continue this chat, because good chats can move the charts. Thank you.